Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Sunday Night Breakdown. Daniel Routledge and Dave Forrester once again with you to break down the weekend of action in the British Basketball League. And I have to say, I think this is the first time since we started doing this where it was all staggered quite nicely over the weekend, made it much easier to consume.
Just about right, thanks guys.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. If we could just get all of the streams to work properly, that would be great. Let's go to Friday night, and Glasgow Rocks 107, Manchester Giants 82. Rocks really jumped on them early here. They got up 21-7 after 7.5 minutes. They really exploded out of the blocks.
Yeah, and they really, I mean, they looked right. They just looked right. They were coming off a loss, and I think they'd had a little bit of a wake up. I also think they'd had a week of drilling in relation to the opposition. And I think when I saw them the first week in Newcastle, they were very drilled. And I thought in relation to Manchester, they were very drilled as well. They guarded well. They guarded Dan Clark well. You could see that they had a plan. It looks like they're all bought into that. And Elijah Mini is my man. I've decided, Mini man. I'm still not quite sure what he is, but he played 36 minutes in this game. I think in the first 4 minutes of the game, he absolutely set the tone for Glasgow without actually taking a shot. I think he blocked Jamal Anderson in the corner. He blocked a shot at the rim. He deflected one and got out for maybe a dunk or a dunk for somebody else. And he impacted the game in every way without touching the basketball. And then he knocked in a couple of shots later on. And he's really interesting. He's really interesting because he's one of the few guys in this league who is so long. I think that he can play above the rim, he can change shots, and he can impact the game not just with the ball in his hands. I think when he may well be their bellwether going forward. Johnson again was excellent. And Manchester basically had little answer for Glasgow's spacing, their energy, and their shooting. They came back into it a little bit.
They had a 10-0 run, but at that point they were down. Fraser had hit 7 points. They were down 44-28, and they had a little bit of a run, but to be honest with you, it just got quashed early in the third quarter.
Yeah, the first 2 minutes of the third quarter were brutal. And I think it was an 18-point game, and it kind of vacillated between about 10 and a little bit more after that. What interested me about Manchester was, again, Lloyd started all his British guys, has the American guys come off the bench, and he didn't do that tonight, and we'll get to that in a minute. And I understand why, because I think that can be detrimental to a lot of things. It can create cliques in the team, especially when you've got new Americans in and they're all coming off the bench, particularly when the British guys at the beginning of the third quarter didn't really cover themselves in glory. And also it means that if everybody's coming off the bench, all those guys are looking for their shots and they're all kind of competing a little bit. And he mixed and matched tonight, and I think was a lot more successful with it. But I think that impacted the way they played as well. They weren't right in that game. They didn't look like the players had their kind of heads on in relation to the being satisfied with the rules that they wanted. And as you say, after I think the 3 turnovers at the beginning of the third quarter, the 17 or an 18-point game.
Yeah, 57-40 at that point.
And at that point, Manchester are always going to score. They've got scorers. They can get to the rim. They've got athletes. But they were never going to get enough stops. And then Jordan Johnson, as the game was going on, I praised myself even more for my Gerald Brooks analogy. It may actually be Gerald Brooks with a little bit more of a jump shot and a little bit more poise, because when he decides he's going to get to the rim, he's a bowling ball. Yeah, he's a bowling ball who's in control and who can finish, and also knows where his corners are and knows where his other guys are and how to hit them. Yeah. So 3 exceptional games in a row for him, and they won that game on Friday without Jack Donmey.
Yeah. 19-8 and 8 he had for an efficiency of 29. Mini ended up with 21 and 7, but as you say, he did a lot of great work before he started scoring. And Fraser looking back to his best with 21 points as well.
Yeah, Ali Fraser, I think, is very much a product of those guys, the guys around him in the role that he has. I don't think he's a guy you could say he's Leicester kind of used him as off the bench, but I wouldn't think even Ali would describe himself as an energy guy off the bench.
Yeah.
I think he's more a guy who needs to get set in the game, and then he can be very effective and he can beat you in a number of ways because he can step out to the 15-foot, even the occasional 3. And if he catches the basketball in the post, I mean, the size doesn't matter because he's got these gadget arms which kind of go out around people. He doesn't finish over people; he generally finishes around them. And because he's ambidextrous, he's a very efficient scorer. So him getting 35 minutes out of him, because Jack Donnelly wasn't playing and still winning so comfortably, it's a major bonus for Glasgow.
Banked in a 3 as well. Giants with 47 points off the bench. You talked about that. Steele, their leading starter with 13 points. The interesting one, I mean, you talked about Dan Clark, how they defended him, didn't let him get anything on that pick and pop that we saw on his debut. He only ended up with 5 shots in total.
Yeah, you kind of have to fight him at the top of the key. You've literally got to be attached to his body, because if you let him move with any degree of freedom, legally of course, but if you let him move with any degree of freedom, you'll just walk into a dribble handoff, or walk into just a quick pick and drop off. And I thought Glasgow did that perfectly. They really were aggressive at that, and sometimes that does mean that you give up space behind you. And that means that there are some lanes driving to the rim for the likes of Whelan and Steele and Armstrong, the American point guard. But again, they had Minnie and Hillsman and Harris, Harris in particular, was also quite long, so they could kind of be on the help side to that, and they could change shots at the rim even when the big guy was out there, tussling with Dan Clark. So yeah, great game plan from Glasgow, a comfortable win. And maybe a bounce back game from Manchester's win and Glasgow's loss.
Yeah, indeed. Let's shift it on to the other game on Friday night. Newcastle Eagles 82, Sheffield Sharks 85. And the big thing about this, you're coming for my job, Dave. What is this? You on lead comms? What is this?
I don't know, and I'm certainly not coming for your job. I can say that with the utmost degree of certainty. No, I got about an hour before. I was actually coaching my 9-year-old daughter in the Eagles 4-on-4 pre-game tournament on the court, and 2 minutes to go in the final game. We weren't close to winning, but 2 minutes to go in the final game, I got a tap on the shoulder. It's like, Dave, and can you do the commentary, because Jeff, the normal commentator, had a bite on his leg and he come up and I go to hospital, but he's fine, because I saw him on Saturday night at the WBBL game and thanked him very much for the timeliness of his injury. It was a very interesting experience, because the score wasn't right and the stats weren't up, and it's not quite. You can't actually. The view's not great from. I'm used to have a better view, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because we're at the back of the stand and people stand.
I'm just hearing excuses from this end, mate. That's all I'm hearing.
That's fair enough. And I call it mitigation in my trade.
Mitigation, yes, indeed.
Call it excuses, but no, it's legit. But it was exhilarating, albeit probably more so for the commentator than for the listeners.
Yeah.
No, but that said, it doesn't mean I haven't got much to say about the game, because I think I said most of it for anybody who watched it anyway. On there, Sheffield were really good early on. I said they were actually, no, to be fair, Sheffield actually weren't that good, but Newcastle weren't very good in the first half. Sheffield could have been up by more if they'd actually been a little bit more efficient in their shooting, but they still had 49 points on scores at the rim, and there was just no tenacity to Newcastle at all. It was very kind of moribund. Third quarter, and I said I couldn't even pick out a guy from Sheffield. So I said, he ran the game or he destroyed them. He didn't, because even the guys who were effective, who appeared to be effective, Kipper Nicholas was 4-13 in the game. Yeah, the only guy who scored at will was John Williams, and that's because he was able to get to the rim basically unmolested, and there was nobody there to assist. And then once he got going, he made a couple of threes. And then the third quarter, the game got a little bit more interesting. Eagles teamed up Shelton and Defoe in the middle, and that kind of clogged up the paint, and they became a lot more active defensively on the perimeter. They got some steals and kind of turned the game a little bit. And, the arena turned a little bit, and it just, it seemed that they had a bit of momentum, but they couldn't carry it through probably until about the 4-minute mark. And then Defoe came out of the game, and think Fletcher came out of the game in the middle of the fourth quarter, and they kind of lost their momentum at that point. And when I think Fletcher came back with 3 minutes to go, it was a relatively close game, if not Sheffield up.
Yeah, it was a pretty close. It was a pretty close finish, and I know people on Twitter are just waiting for me and you to go for this last 32 seconds. So why don't we cut the crap and get straight to the good stuff? That the last 32 and a half seconds was strategically just unbelievably dumb. I mean, both teams, it was mistake after mistake. It made no sense.
Yeah, I mean, actually, the possession before, I think Sheffield ran the clock down and turned it over. They got nothing good. I think Fletcher may have got a steal and got the spin and reduced it to a 1-point game.
Yeah.
And Tiba time out with 32 seconds to left, just to rally the troops. Tiba does the right thing. He takes the ball at the far end, so he's got 24 seconds on the shot clock. And at that point in time, it's a 1-point game, and it's anybody's game. It's it's one shot each. You get one shot each, or one possession each, and if the possessions, there's 2/3 chance that Sheffield win, because if they score, they're likely to win. If nobody scores, Sheffield are likely to win. But if Sheffield miss and Newcastle score, well, Newcastle are going to win. That's a simplistic way of putting it. There's a lot more twists and turns into it than that. But ultimately, for Sheffield to have the ball with 32.5 seconds left, and to still have the ball with 1.5 seconds left without having shot it. They did shoot it without having hit the rim.
Yeah.
Right? Is just mind blowing.
Yeah.
In reality, because you just have to give yourself the opportunity to have a shot, or you have to foul them so that you're getting a shot back and you've still got a shot to tie the game. It's not let you down.
So the first mistake was Newcastle had only got one foul. So the first mistake was you play defense there because you can't force them to the free throw line. And I think it was Corey Johnson committed the foul, but it was 12, 14 seconds into the shot clock. So now what you're doing is you're giving them the ball back with less time.
You took 5. That foul was, I think, at 10 on the shot clock, so it took 4 seconds off because it goes back to 14. There's only 8 second differential in Michigan, so that shot's down to 4. So there's 4 second differential, and the difference between 8 seconds and 4 seconds is the difference between Newcastle United and Chelsea. It is just immense, right? And so because 4 seconds, Sheffield can basically hold the ball, get a shot up at the end, challenge for a rebound, and it's a half court heave.
Yeah.
Even if they miss, if they hit the rim, the game is, at the right time, then it's tough to see the other team getting a good shot. With 8 seconds, it's game on for anybody. So then they put the ball in bounds, and Fletcher commits a foul, kind of bodying up. And I wasn't sure if that was a deliberate foul or not, but that just took another 2 seconds off.
Yeah.
So suddenly 4 second differential becomes a 2 second differential, which means that now Newcastle are in the position where they have to foul.
Yeah. Okay,
not a problem. Except when they put the ball in, they throw it to Kipper Nichols on the wing, and Wes Person doesn't know that they have to foul now.
Yeah.
There's only one, so he stands there.
And then Kipper goes to the basket.
Nichols stands there for about 3 seconds, and you can see there's kind of a suspended animation thing whereby at this point I'm not commentating, I'm coaching.
Yeah.
He's just got to hold the ball. He's got to hold the ball. The Eagles have to foul, and neither did it, because it's almost like Person con Nichols into driving by not fouling. Nichols thought, I better do something. He chucked up a pretty weak left-hand hook shot, which Defoe, credit him, blocked, but they couldn't keep it in bounds. So you're down to 6 seconds. At this point, Sharks have got the ball 6 seconds, 4.9 seconds on the shot clock, so there's a 1 second differential. Eagles call the last time out. That means Eagles can't advance the ball at the end because all they can do now is foul. They can't play it out.
Yeah, they
have to foul. But they aren't going to be able to advance the ball, even if it's a 3-point game. So what then happens is Sheffield throw the ball in from the baseline, and there's no real pressure from Newcastle to get a steal, which I said on the commentary, they have to go for a steal. But they didn't really switch all screens, and they got the ball in quite comfortably, despite the fact it was a difficult spot to get the ball in from. And they got in quite comfortably. And then, and someone took a quick foul. That's fine. Okay, 4 seconds left. And then the last time, Nichols, I think it was one of the Sharks guys, pops out, catches the ball with no one anywhere near him, has time to throw it back to the point guard in the corner to run another 2.5 seconds off. So the foul comes with, as I say, 1.5 to go. They're up 1, brave man making them both, to be honest, but I think
Yeah.
it's probably the right thing to do because you want to be up 3, not 2, in case, so you can't get beat on a heave. And then even on the inbounds, he tried to throw it long. He just kind of dropped. Shelton just dropped it to Fletcher, who had to throw it 90 feet. The ball has to travel a long
Even then,
distance.
he could have took one dribble at least with 1.5 seconds. But
it was like in the air. I mean, it was like the air going out of a balloon extraordinarily slowly at the end of that game. And you were just looking for somebody just to kind of pick the bones out of it and just say, whether it be from Newcastle's perspective, are we fouling or what are we doing? From Sheffield's perspective, what are we doing? And neither did it. And ultimately, Sheffield get the win. And last minute execution, in this league this year, is going to be pretty important.
Yeah.
Because we got at the moment, outside perhaps Surrey and Plymouth, who are still coming together, we have 8 teams that you think, are going to be close on any given night to each other, given the scores that we've seen. And that's where the last 5 minutes comes down to, who's making the right reads, who's making the right plays at the right time. So this stuff does matter. Once we harp on about it, it does matter to wins and losses records. And I think Newcastle let that one go. They didn't give themselves a shot. They didn't give themselves a shot to win, which is what you have to do. Sheffield very, very good in that building. 7-3 since the building went up. They are.
To be fair, Newcastle have the 5th best record in that building.
Is that right?
Yeah, by win percentage. By win percentage.
Yeah, that wouldn't there. Yeah, so we need to do something about that, don't we? We'll have to start setting off flares in the opposition before the game. I don't know. Vince, what should I do, Vince? Sorry. Anyway, moving on. Yeah.
So 23, 6 and 4. Williams.
Hang on. Yeah. I didn't tell you I was going to say that. How the heck do you know that stat?
What? 23, 6 and 4?
No, the 5th.
Oh, no, I just. You know how I know the stat? Because Sheffield put out their record on Twitter, and I thought, oh, is that the best record in that building? And it's not, because they also lost 2 in that building that they didn't count because they were against other teams. So they're 7 and 5, I think. In that building.
This is not rehearsed, people. This is not
rehearsed. No, I just happened to look it up yesterday because Sheffield put it out on Twitter.
Sorry. Yeah, moving
on. Williams 23, 6 and 4 led the way. Only 15 points off the bench for the Eagles, and I almost don't want to give this stat out now, but that's the 6th time Eagles have been 0-2, but it looked good when I wrote it down. Second time at home, they've lost both of those games, but both of their opening 2 games. 97-8 was the other season.
It was Sporting Club time. That was
miles away. A different world. Let's move on to Saturday. Surrey Scorchers, because I need a long run up for the end of this game as well. Yeah. Surrey Scorchers 65, Plymouth City Patriots 57. Stanley Davis Jr. and Lamar Hamrick were available this time around for the Scorchers, or the clearance had come through, and Deji Adekunle returns to Plymouth, having started the season at Oaklands, to give them a bit more size and depth, obviously with the big fella still missing. And Scorchers get out to a great start. Davis got off to a great start, 6 points early on, 14-2 lead after 6 minutes for Surrey.
Yeah, for who's going to be the first person to call him Sammy Davis Jr.? I've just that name's in my head now. Every time someone says his name, I'm listening for it just in case. They kind of picked on Liam Carpenter early because he was running the point, because obviously Dusha wasn't fit, and they kind of picked on him with Davis's athleticism. Davis saw a little guy who's 5'8", 5'9", guarding him, and the first thing he did was like a pro, as it goes down in the post, steps past him and lays it up and in, and then they picked up a bit of pressure as well. Full court and turned them over a couple of times. And what you tend to find is, especially with Americans who've been sitting around watching, it's awful. It's really hard for them. And when they come in, they're literally juiced to the extreme. And you really got that impression with Davis in particular, because I think Hamrick came off the bench. And that start happened. And there was a point whereby you thought, how are Plymouth going to get a shot here? Because Elvisi is their primary shot creator, out the screen and roll. And issues, in relation to shot creation are significant. And PG's, I think, decided that he's going to get his team to play as much defense as he can, and just try and scrape out enough points to remain in the game, which actually happened in this game. That said, Surrey really should have been out of sight, but they're also a very fresh team with guys who are coming in and out. I think Davis is going to be an interesting one to follow because he's clearly athletically gifted. He kind of seems to me to be kind of the kind of guy who's so athletically gifted that he doesn't necessarily know his own game because he can do everything. But he can't necessarily, there are some things he can do better than others, but because he can do everything, he tries everything. So there were some ill-advised shots he took in this game whereby you think, no, just get to your spot and finish, and be more, particularly in the second half when their scoring kind of slowed up. But Plymouth, they kept running their sets. Joe Hart knocked down some threes, which he's going to do eventually because he's going to touch the ball a lot. Denzel started attacking and getting to the rim again, which he's going to do. And the big guys were competitive. Sean Shelton, Cameron King, and Adekunle, they were competitive enough upside to pick up enough second shots, enough putbacks to stay in. And when Surrey came in with their bench, but Surrey's bench struggled, and suddenly we got a relatively close game, albeit Surrey had like 44 points at the half.
So I think it was 42 they had. They were 42-30 up with two minutes to halftime, and then Joe Hart had a couple of threes either side of halftime. They had a 12-0 run, and you talked about their defense. I thought they were tremendous in that third quarter, particularly at the start of the third quarter. Plymouth, the way they played at that end of the floor.
Yeah, the difficulty was they burnt themselves out because of the energy that they were expending, and that's the only way they can play. But they don't. Not only do they struggle with the athleticism, they don't really have the bodies either, which is a double problem. And that kind of is emphasised at the end of both the third and the fourth quarter. At the end of the third quarter, they didn't score until the last 5 minutes of the third quarter.
Just before you get to that, one thing I wanted to pick up, Saquon Jameson, 2.5 minutes into the third quarter, I watched it back because I didn't quite see what happened in real time. He just seemed to fall over. But actually what happened was on the rebound, he landed down on his right leg. He seemed to grab at his knee and he was hobbling going forward. Teo then turned the ball over. He's running backwards, goes down, and then went out of the game, came back a few minutes later, but couldn't really run or jump. But the way it came from a land, that's one that always looks really bad then, because you sort of think there's nobody anywhere near him. He's gone straight for his knee, and the falling over was actually as a result rather than the cause.
Yeah, I thought knee immediately when I saw it, and he kind of hobbled off. But because there's not a jar, there's not a contact, so you're worried that there's something internally happened in there. But then he was, they were able to put him back on the court. So someone must have said, it was all right. This game, by the way, led probably the league this whole season in the amount of people falling over and giving the ball to the opposition in their own backcourt. I mean, multiple times, and it was both teams. Yeah, and by the way, before I forget, if Niall says legend has it one more time, I'm going to think he's saying it deliberately. So every time Robertine seems to get a rebound, legend has it. I'm waiting for the I am legend pun at some point, but
knowing Niall, it will come.
It will come. So we are listening, Niall. We try not to, but we are. And so the game kind of degenerated a little bit into a kind of a breakfast, really. Around the end of the third quarter, I think Plymouth scored 7 points in the last 14 minutes of the whole game, and none of them were in the half court.
Yeah.
And Surrey, you wouldn't say Surrey were much more offensively efficient, but Martel McLemore stepped up and made a couple of shots, which no one else in the game really could. And they got just enough kind of bully ball stuff from Davis and the odd putback to squeeze the life out of the game. But Plymouth scored 7 points in 14 minutes, and as I say, one was a fast break dunk where there was 2-on-0 break. One was an offensive tip back from Shelton, and one was an open three in transition from Ubiaro. They just couldn't get anything in the half court, and you felt for them because they put so much energy into the basketball game. But they're going to need some assistance in the half court. LVC will help a lot, but they probably need one or two more as well, shot creators.
Yeah, sorry, the last 10 points of the game and didn't score. Raiders didn't score for the last 5 minutes. Now, I just cannot understand why in an 8-point game with whatever time there was left, 12, 14 seconds, it was more than 8 seconds because they had to get it over the halfway line.
Yeah.
You dribble out in the cup. Now, I've said this before and said, well, hypothetically, if you could get the way this group is shaping up, it looks like these two teams are fighting it out for the 4th spot. Now, maybe, Surrey will get Lawrence and Gilchrist together and Jameson will be fit and they'll win games and it won't matter. But as it stands, that's not beyond the realms of possibility. Now, maybe Gilchrist and Lawrence.
The probability.
Yeah. Maybe Gilchrist and Lawrence don't come back. Maybe Jameson is injured. It's not unbelievable that Plymouth could then win the game by 9 and you would miss out by a point because you didn't even take a shot on the final play. It makes, I have no understanding.
To be honest, I don't even blame the ball handler because the rest of his team had stopped. No one was running. In fact, the most of them were staring at the crowd going, woo, we've won. And it's his first game in the country as well.
Yeah,
so, it's not... It's difficult, but no, you're right. I mean, it's mind-boggling, really. That is a two. If you're going into that game thinking this is a two-legged game at Plymouth, you have to. Yeah, the way that London are playing, the way that Leicester are talented, and the way that Bristol have started and they've got their bodies together now, you can't say that either team will be favoured to win any of those games. In fact, they'll be pretty prohibitive underdogs in at least the London and Leicester games, and they've already lost to Bristol, I think. Sorry, and potentially somebody else. So yeah, it's just mind-boggling. They have to, people. We have to get better at this. We have to get better at end of game stuff.
Well, they're minus 17 as well because they lost big at Leicester. So even if you're thinking about, well, we might get in a three-way tie with somebody else, you need to get your basket difference up overall.
Well, to do that, you have to win 2 games because Bristol have won 2 games. Really.
Yeah.
I don't. It's just that mindset is before that game is it's a 2-legged game. It has to be, and they didn't. And neither team, I think, really had that. I don't know. Maybe Plymouth did, but Surrey certainly didn't.
21 turnovers for the Patriots, 19 points off those 21 turnovers. That's a big chunk of 65. Let's go on to the other game on Saturday night. Bristol Flyers 80, London Lions 90. No Josh Rogers. He banged his head. He's in concussion protocol from the previous game. Marcus Evans was in. And this game started really well. Jacobs 7 points, 11-9 after 3 minutes, both teams scoring. And I suppose the question, a bit similar to last year, is you look at the squad that London have, is can you keep pace? It's fine to go 11-9 through 3 minutes, but you feel like London can keep that going, and can anybody else keep that going to stick with them if they're going to play that way?
I think it's undoubtedly the case that they're better off the bench than they were last year. I'm not sure. I haven't seen enough of their starters yet. But they went the other way to Manchester, London. They started the 4 Americans. So they've got a ton of BBL experience coming off the bench. They've got Jordan Spencer, Jordan Williams. I think Will Neighbour started this game, Chris Tawia, and a couple of other guys as well. And if you can bring Jordan Williams off the bench, and Jordan Williams can be the focal point for your second unit, you're going to have a good second unit. You're going to have a good second unit because he's a facilitator as well as a scorer, and he's a BBL vet, so he knows his game, and he knows the league, and he knows what's required. And it may be more difficult for him in the European games because he's new to that, and he's going to get his head around where he needs to be, what spacing there is as well. But you're going down to Bristol, and it's a close game, and you can bring Jordan Williams off the bench and start playing through him. Against the bench, against the second unit of the opposition, then there's a real prospect. I haven't seen much of London. I didn't see much of this game because it hasn't been back up since the game was played on the play. I was trying to watch it this afternoon, but it wasn't back up. I liked in the European game. I liked what I saw at Washburn. I don't know how consistent he's going to be, but I thought he looked like a pretty solid player. Reese is a big point guard. He appears to have settled down well in the BBL. Obviously, they're waiting for Justin as well. I don't know how long that is. There's been no official thing about that. They have the chance, I think, because of the people they've got coming off the bench, to be really good. In relation to almost a little Leicester-like, whereby they're not last year, we talked about Kevin Ware a lot. Kevin Ware was very spotty off the bench. There were some other guys who were very spotty off the bench, who they were here and there, who never knew when they were playing. So Jules didn't know when he was playing, and Jordan Spence didn't know he was playing. Lockhart didn't know when he was playing. They didn't have much behind Dirk Williams, but now they've signed a couple more wings and they've got a bit more length at that spot. And I just think that they're a lot more rounded as a group. May not quite be as talented, but they're a lot more rounded as a group than they were. So that's them said. Bristol coming off a 2-0 weekend, integrating a new player, losing the guy who's really fundamental in them getting the 2-0 weekend. Josh Rogers made shots in both games and is a glue guy for them and really stepped up. It's probably on that basis not a surprise that they couldn't survive. What will survive with London? What I will say is that I think the teams which have almost been less systematic at the beginning of the season offensively have an advantage, because at the moment everybody's offense is a bit off, but defense always comes quicker than offense in the first few weeks of the season. And Bristol, with their guys who are just going and attacking, they've been offensively, pretty good. Some of the teams that are struggling have been a little bit more systematic, and it's been less of players attacking. It's been more players having to think. And when players are having to think and they've only been here a few weeks, that's when you get those little hesitations. So I like what Bristol have done. I like the talent that they have. I think London was just the wrong team at the wrong time. And I think Bristol will be all right.
Flyers were down 18 with 2 minutes to go. They played the last 2 minutes like the points mattered, and they took 8 of them off the board.
And for that, you get the Routledge gold star.
Thumbs up for that. Well played. But Andreas talked about it after the game. He said, "Okay, we got it down to 10. So maybe they don't win the head-to-head with London, but maybe those 8 points count somewhere else." It's just you're better off having them than not. Is my take.
Absolutely. More importantly, better off having 8 than losing 26.
Exactly.
10 and losing 26, it's a big difference.
Let's go on to Manchester against Newcastle from today's game, and it finished Manchester 92, Newcastle 86 in this game.
I didn't see this game, Dan. I've got nothing to say.
You got nothing at all to say. Well, that's good, because I got loads of notes here, so I can go through everything.
Oh, I did. I watched nearly all of it. Manchester changed the starting lineup, which I thought was the right thing to do, because you have to integrate the guys, you have to integrate the Americans. You brought them in for a reason, and Armstrong and I think it was McKnight. I don't think McKnight started, but I think Armstrong did. McKnight was in the game shortly afterwards. Armstrong was very good, and he was matching up with Fletcher, And Fletcher's kind of had all these new guards coming out. I mean, it's every season's new season. All these guys are coming in here to prove a point, to make a point, So yeah, he started, and Newcastle actually started quite well in this basketball game. They're starting to move the ball relatively well. It took me I didn't watch all of it, because obviously the Playbill player was down, and then some sage of the internet told me to go on the Bet365, which helped. So did that. But the first half, I thought Newcastle were impactful. Shelton was rebounding everything. 10 rebounds or 11 rebounds in the first half. And, Fletcher looked engaged early, made a couple of shots. And they were looking like they were up for the game, as indeed they should have been, because they're 0-2 and they needed the win. The game was a game of runs, though, and also it was that foul trouble stuff again, which kind of kicked in. So Fletcher came out, I think, with 2 fouls. He played a couple of minutes with 2 fouls in the second quarter, but he came out with 5 minutes to go in the second quarter. Didn't go back in, and from memory, I think maybe 10 points, went down to 2 and then back up to 6 or 7 at the half. But I thought the momentum...
It went from 10 down to 4 and back up again, and then it was 8 at halftime, 43-51 at halftime. 17 scorers in the first half, by the way.
Yeah, I thought there was a little momentum shift just at the end of that second quarter. The game was, I think, at one point Newcastle up 13, and you're thinking, a couple more stops here, and Lloyd's going to have to go deep in to try and find something else. And you always want the opposition coach to go away from what he wants to do, because what he wants to do isn't working. Generally, if he goes away from what he wants to do, it's very rare that you come up with something out of your pocket that is better than what you wanted to do in the first place. But you have to do it because all these other guys on the bench are sitting here thinking, these guys aren't doing it, you got to let me play. But it's very rare that you've got the entirely wrong guys on the court all the time. So I think in scoring the points that they scored at the end of the first half, I think Manchester got a bit of offensive confidence. And I think the game went, they probably had 42 at the half, and they'd only had 25 halfway through it.
43.
Yeah. So they scored a lot of points in that time. It kind of became a bit of a scoring race. And then in the third quarter, very up and down. It was a big movement when Shelton picked up his third foul. He had to go out. I think he is a potential difference maker for the Eagles defense, because he blocks shots, he rebounds, and they don't really have anybody else with his mobility in there and ability to do that. Gets extra possessions, and he sat down the whole third quarter with 3 fouls, basically the whole third quarter. And Manchester, again, their offense is predicated around Dan Clark a lot, because Dan Clark draws people out. He creates space for others, and they have 2 great drivers in Josh Steele and Jordan Whelan. And then the point guard, Tariq Armstrong, has also showed himself to be adept at driving and kicking the ball. Newcastle's help defense, I thought, was a step slow, and they made the wrong choices at times. They moved off the corner a little bit, gave up threes that they shouldn't give on open corner threes, and notwithstanding that, they were still, I think, up by about 8 with 5 minutes to go, and then the wheels fell off.
Yeah, so let me just run through the third quarter. 12-4 start by the Giants, tied it at 55. I think Eagles had 8 turnovers in the first 5 minutes of that third quarter.
That's one thing. Just to come on that, Dan, I'll cut you off. I'm sorry. 2 things in the third quarter. One, it perplexed me how much Pearson was handling the ball instead of Fletcher. I understand they like to move Fletcher off the basketball so he can come and he can attack, particularly off the corner. But he spent a lot of time in that game stood in the corner. And particularly when the pressure was on, Manchester turned the pressure on one person a little bit, who showed in the first half that he could score. He hasn't necessarily showed that he's a fantastic facilitator yet. That was the first thing. And the second thing was after that Manchester run, it was basically Defoe.
Yeah,
Defoe who grabbed Newcastle and put them back in the game. Fletcher and Defoe, they worked together. They did what they did, and I think they had probably 6 or 8 points. And also their defense picked up, because the defense always picks up when offense does. So that kind of lumped Newcastle back out to an 8-point lead, I think. Sorry,
6. So they had a 14-2 run. That's the time you were talking about with Defoe and Fletcher, and 6.5 to play, and it is. They did get to 8. Sorry, it was 72-78, but it got out to 74-82, and then this is the point the wheels came off. Giants with the next 12 points of the game.
Yeah, I mean and I thought the thing was, Newcastle got some decent shots. I think Corey Johnson was just beginning out of rhythm. He came out. Kyle Williams came in. Kyle Williams didn't knock down some shots in the first half. Didn't knock them down in the second half. And Corey Johnson, had one which went halfway down from the corner as well. But that isn't the issue. At the end of the games on the road, it's not about whether you knock down shots. It's about whether you can get stops. Because if you get stops, you will score off your transition. You will score eventually. And what happened was, I think Louis Sayers knocked down a 3.
Anderson, wait, sorry, yeah.
Lloyd pulled the timeout, and then 2 easy corner threes.
Anderson hit the first one,
and Steele, I think, hit the second one. And you can't give up a corner 3 off one pass to those guys who are stood in the corner waiting for the pass. And then at that point, Eagles didn't really know whether to stick or twist with whether they were playing offense, whether they had an offensive line on or a defensive line on. So Defoe had been out at that point, but he came back in for defense. But Ian wasn't very happy that Defoe and Shelton were in together, because of the 4 guys that Manchester were playing on the perimeter, and he didn't fancy Shelton guarding the perimeter. So then Shelton came out, but that then cost Eagles some rim protection. So the only chance that Eagles really had was and Shetland picked up a 4th foul as well, was, to get into a scoring race and make some shots. And they had the shots. Fletcher had a wide open 3.
Yeah.
When they were down 2 maybe, and he missed it and they ran back the other way. But if you're relying on making shots on the road, when the opposition is able to score, we had 76 points, 74 points with 5 minutes to go, and they finished with 92.
Yeah.
So that's 18 points in the last 5 minutes. You're not going to win games on the road.
No.
You're just not going to win games on the road. Credit to Manchester because they kept attacking. That was the big thing. Armstrong kept attacking, and they didn't. I don't think they overcomplicated, because the shots that they got were generally off relatively straightforward stuff. It was penetration, attack, kick to the corner if you can. There wasn't much extra passing going on. It didn't need to be, and they just knocked down the shots that they had. So they went from about 25 points halfway through the second quarter to 92 for the game. 67 points in 25 minutes. That's a lot of points in a BBL game when you're trying to win on the road, and you need to win. So Newcastle got some issues. Obviously, they're now 0-3, and more importantly, everybody else in the league's got
everybody else is on 2 in that group.
So they need to win at a minimum of 3 games out of the last 5. They have a lot of gap. They're playing primarily 8 guys, and the mesh doesn't quite seem to be there either in the back court or the front court yet. They haven't got the combination sorted as to who needs to play with who and when. There's kind of a little bit of experimenting going on with Kyle Williams and Pearson on the ball, and is it going to be Sayers? Is it going to be Corey Johnson? Is it going to be Kyle Williams shooting the threes? Or are you going to have 2 bigs on the court? You're going to have 1 big on the court. You don't quite think they've got that yet, but they're also running their system. And as I say, early on in the season, it's tough to be as effective when you haven't got the guys basically in and ready and running the system. So we'll see. I mean, it'll be a big game on Friday night now, because 0-4, and then really they're looking down the barrel of not qualifying.
They are. Can I just point out that Lloyd Gardner called a timeout with 2 seconds to go to draw up a play to get 2 more points. The play was perfect.
Can I just point out that at that point in time, I turned off.
Play was run perfect. He missed the layup. It should have been 2 more points, but that's the end of the game. That's how you do it. That's how you understand the rules of the competition. But there you go.
Up, Lloyd.
There we go. It's my little soapbox, and I'm going to stay on it for the rest of this cup conference.
You might have changed the culture of Basketball Nation.
Let's move on to the last game. Cheshire Phoenix 84, Glasgow Rock 77.
Glasgow uniform alert.
Go on.
That white thing again. Sorry.
Oh. They're not going to change it just because you said.
I know, but I'm sorry. Just
We're going to get this every Glasgow away game, I can see.
I will try not to be so predictable.
No Ben Thomas. So that it helps that you've got a former BBL head coach as your assistant coach in that situation. So Danny Byrne was there. Ben Thomas was ill, so couldn't make it. Noah Dickinson is in and made a rather limited debut, given he got in on Friday, but he's there, and that's good for them. Levi Bradley, we talked about him last week. Tremendous start. This bit more Sheffield than it was Manchester for Levi Bradley this time around. He had all 9 in a 9-3 run that put them out to a 10-point lead.
Yeah, no, that's going to be. We said that's going to be key for them, how Bradley plays, because he's the difference, kind of offensive difference maker for them. I thought Glasgow looked very weary, very throughout the whole game. I'm not making excuses. I'm not denigrating Cheshire and what they did, because they did what they had to do. But that's Glasgow's 4th game in 9 days. Newcastle, back to Glasgow, and up to Cheshire again. And at the beginning of the season, coming off a 25-point win, Johnson didn't have it. It's the first time Johnson hasn't had his game. He hasn't. His numbers were okay, but he had no real impact on the game the way that he's been destroying other teams.
13, 6, and 7, shot 5 of 17 from the floor.
He had 5 of 17. He just didn't. There was times he had his hands on his knees. There was times he looked a little bit gassed. And because Jack Domley wasn't playing, and for whatever reason, Bunyan didn't came on to 5 minutes to go in the 4th quarter. He played the whole game, and Fraser played the whole game. And I don't think that's sustainable in the second game of a weekend of a back-to-back in the 4 and 5 hour bus trip for them. I'm still intrigued, and this isn't a criticism at all. I'm intrigued with Gareth's substitution or non-substitution patterns, because there is nothing that is easily discernible. He seems to read the game. It seems to be all about the way the game is going, the game is playing. This game, he played a starting 5 for the first 12 minutes. You know, they were on, even though they weren't playing well, they were down. He kept them out there the first 12 minutes. And, you know, that's actually incredibly rare.
Incredibly rare.
Because a coach, particularly when things aren't going right, the coach is always going to look down his bench and see what's going on. So he's got a team to coach now. He didn't have a team to coach last year. He had a bunch of individuals who were talent deficient, who he was struggling to mesh to play the way he wanted to. And even if they did play the way he wanted them to play, they weren't going to win. So you don't get any validation from that. Now he's got a team to coach, and he's got a number of guys who can, I think, fit in. And to be fair, you know, it's not like he buries them on the bench; he doesn't play them. It's just that I haven't yet really discerned a kind of a pattern for them. So I'll be watching that moving forward. That said, they got themselves into a rhythm. And I was watching the Newcastle game with like an eye and a half, and this game with half an eye, unless it was half time in the Newcastle game or at the end finished. And they just hung around. And that's because they've got some shooters.
Well, it was one of those things where they scored 14 of the last 18 points in that first half, with Malcolm and Hillsman and Johnson hitting threes. And they went into halftime only down 5, shooting 35% from the floor and that 20-something from the 3-point line. You sort of think, how are they only down 5, given the way the game's played out?
Yeah, it was strange, but the reason is because they've got good space and they've got good shooters, and they're not scared to shoot. You know, those guys all think it's going in when they put the shot up. You can see it in their eyes, and as such, you know, if you're playing without that fear of failure or that hesitation, which I think is probably and that comes with togetherness and understanding and knowing that you've got kind of a team whereby you fit into a specific box that the team needs you to do. And if you can do that, then you can overcome a lot of difficulties. They needed more. They are still Johnson dependent though. And as I say, Gareth played a little bit. Johnny played only the last 5 minutes, as I say, which, you know, I don't know how he's meant to play off the bench when he hasn't done anything for an hour and a half. It seems really difficult. And they ran out of gas. Now Cheshire, Teddy O, as we're calling him, because there's all the pronunciations of his name, very aggressive in the first half. Much better for it, less tentative, less European, to use a phrase. You know, I think he has assimilated himself to the league. I think he's figured he's got a team around him of guys who want to go, basically want to run. So name on right, Carl Carey, Bradley wants to shoot it every time he touches it. You know, Mike Ocherobia is running straight to the rim. You know all this stuff's going to happen. So I think that's freed him up to, you know, to shoot the ball whenever he feels he can. And I thought he was very aggressive in the first half. In the second half, they got out and ran a little bit. They got some cheap stuff in transition, and that kind of separated them from Glasgow. And as I say, the shots were people who were bouncing off Jordan Johnson, they weren't quite bouncing off as far. And the shots that were going in off the glass, they were just rimming out. And that ultimately makes a difference when and Ali Fraser's playing 40 minutes. That's just tough. That's just really, really tough to do. And he's effective, and he's going to get what he's going to get. But it's all the little hustle stuff at the other end, all the defense at the other end that you need to win. That's what you're going to lose when you're playing a guy like Ali Fraser 40 minutes. You're still going to get his 20 and 9 or whatever he got. But it's not necessarily. It's going to be not necessarily going to be a 29 that's going to help you win.
Yeah. Name on right was really good in the couple of spells where they sort of pulled away from them. He had the significant chunk of the offense. He ended up with 22 points. Teddy Okorafor with 18.7 and 4. Hillsman with 18 and 10 led Glasgow. So that brings us to
I think just briefly on that, I think Name on right's going to be an interesting follow this year, because he's going to shoot the ball twice as much as he did at Leicester. And whether we've talked about Bradley as a bellwether, but you know the difference with Cheshire might be if Name on right's 8 of 13 as opposed to 5 of 13. That might be a major difference in the game, because I think he's putting up shots. I think he's going to get 13 to 15 shots a game, and he showed at Leicester they can be an efficient scorer. Question moving forward is he going to be a volume scorer as well? Because it can be a volume and efficient scorer, then they've got themselves a real option to play soccer for. And that he could carry it, and he's going to be, he can give them that bit extra because you know what you're going to get from those other guys, and they're going to be competitive. And I'm really looking forward to the game on Friday night. Now,
yeah, it's fascinating in the.
It's actually a real. We're getting close to a knockout game. Cheshire win, they're basically through.
It's funny. Somebody texted me after the Newcastle game and said, "Oh, it's only cup. These cup games don't all count like that, like they would if Newcastle were 0-3 in the league, they'd be out of the title race, sort of thing."
Yeah.
But at the time they were 0-2. I said it does count if they lose and Cheshire win, and they're suddenly 2 games back. They're in a really difficult spot there, and that's not the team you would have picked. Now, I happen to think all of those teams are relatively evenly matched.
Yes.
And Newcastle have been, for want of a better word, the unfortunate one to go 0-3 rather than.
Well, they've lost. The unfortunate, but they've lost 2 games in the last 3 minutes. And they're effectively 3 minutes of basketball away from being 2-1. But the small differences matter, small margins matter. So you can't turn around and just say, "Oh, it's just unlucky. It'll turn around."
Yeah.
Ultimately, it won't. They've got to find a way of having a 5 on the court at the end who are going to get the job done. But that's every team. And as I say, as the more systematic teams kind of progress, there's every prospect that they will that gap will kind of narrow just a little bit. But we'll see. But it should be, but it puts a bit of jeopardy in the game.
Yeah, definitely.
On Friday night. That's a good thing, I guarantee that everybody in the league will be watching it because obviously Newcastle won the cup last year. Could be the cup holders, being 0-4 and basically having to win 4 consecutive games against good teams to get through, or at least 3 out of those 4. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I will not be commentating. I'm saying that now.
Jeff might pull a hamstring. You never know.
Provided as larynx, he's commentating.
Well, we're looking forward to next week's Sunday night breakdown already, so we best bring this one to an end. We'll be back next Sunday night to plough through that game in Newcastle and all the other ones over the course of the next 7 days in the British Basketball League. But for now, goodbye.